Okay, let's do a deep dive today.
Sounds good.
We're pulling back the curtain on a specific travel experience. It's someone's review of a week-long cruise.
That's right. Through Italy. We're looking at quite an in-depth evaluation of a Best of Italy cruise. It was on the Celebrity Constellation.
Yeah, and our mission here really is to use this review as a kind of lens to see, what cruising is like today.
Mm-hmm. Especially if you've cruised before.
Exactly. If you have expectations based on past trips this reviewer had, and they really unpack what worked, what definitely didn't.
Yeah. What happens when the brochure meets the reality on board?
And the core finding, let's just put it out there up front,
Right.
is that even though the places they visited were great, the actual experience on this cruise, it fell below standards for them.
Yeah, compared to previous cruises they'd taken. So we need to figure out why that was.
Okay, let's get into it then. How does the review actually start? Because it sounds like maybe the first impression wasn't bad.
No, not at all. Actually, the source says boarding was excellent. Really good.
Oh, okay.
They got their luggage tags ahead of time. Dragged off was easy. The check-in, passport scan, photos, security, all very smooth.
So efficient.
They were on the ship and heading to the room super quickly.
Right, that initial ease, that must set a pretty good tone, doesn't it?
Definitely.
Straight to the room, drop bags, grab lunch. Sounds like a perfect start.
It does. And the reviewer mentions the room itself, the cabin, was comfortable. For two people, anyway.
Okay.
Maybe a lot on the small side, but fine for two.
But here's maybe the first disconnect, where expectation meets reality. Because Celebrity apparently advertises these rooms for 4 people.
Right. And our reviewers just couldn't see it. They were like, how could 4 adults, or even, say, a family with teenagers, possibly fit?
Or even just move around.
Yeah, without constantly tripping over bags or each other. It
Yeah.
just seemed impossible to them.
Okay, so that's our first little nugget of insight, right? Advertised capacity might be, technically possible.
Maybe if you stack people vertically.
No, yeah. But the practical comfort for your group, that's a whole different calculation. You really need to look at room dimensions, layout.
Absolutely. Don't just trust the number 4.
For sure. And speaking of practical reality, what was the very next friction point they hit almost as soon as they unpacked?
Power outlets. Or maybe I should say the serious lack of them. Especially for, how we all travel now. They found just 2 standard North American outlets and 2 European ones.
2.
And they were all clustered together in one corner of the desk area.
In 2024, for 2 people. I mean, think about it. Phones, maybe tablets, e-readers.
Laptops, smartwatches.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. This reviewer specifically mentioned they travel with 9 devices between the 2 of them that need regular charging.
9! Wow, so 2 outlets is not going to cut it.
Not even close.
Yeah.
It meant this constant, juggling act, swapping things on and off the charger. Probably pretty frustrating.
Okay, there's a really solid takeaway for anyone listening who's thinking about a cruise, especially maybe on an older ship like the Constellation might be.
Mm-hmm.
Your digital life needs power. It's not just a tiny inconvenience if there aren't enough outlets. It can genuinely affect your trip, using your phone, camera, everything.
It really can. It's a detail you might not even think to check beforehand, but clearly it matters a lot day to day.
Yeah, it's a classic example of older ship infrastructure just clashing with how we live now.
Exactly.
So, okay, moving on from the cabin itself. The review apparently spends quite a bit of time on the food,
It does.
describing it as having this distinct hierarchy. What's that about?
Yeah, this is where you start to see the, let's say, the business model potentially impacting the guest experience pretty heavily.
How so?
The source felt the buffet was clearly the bottom tier. Food quality-wise, just okay, maybe even mediocre
Are
sometimes.
there standard buffet stuff, maybe?
In the main dining room, that was a step up. Better quality, more formal. But it was obvious, they felt, that the best food, the really top-notch stuff, was reserved for the specialty restaurants.
And those, naturally, cost extra.
Exactly. They're not included in your base cruise fare.
Right.
And the reviewer had this strong theory, based on what they saw,
Which was?
that the quality in the included places, especially that buffet, was maybe kept deliberately average to really, really encourage people to pay extra for that better dining experience in the specialty spots.
Wow. And this encouragement, it wasn't exactly subtle, was it?
Not according to this review, no. The source describes feeling pitched almost constantly.
Pitched, like sales pitches.
Yeah, Every time they sat down at the buffet, apparently, someone would come over and try to upsell them.
Yeah.
Have you considered dining at our steakhouse tonight? Or, we have availability at the Italian place.
While you're just trying to eat your lunch.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Imagine just wanting a casual meal and it feels like you've wandered into a timeshare presentation.
That doesn't sound relaxing at all.
No. And it shifts the focus, doesn't it? It's not just about the food quality itself anymore. It's about that feeling of being constantly pressured to spend more money.
Yeah, that's a really important insight into maybe the modern cruise business model. The price you see advertised gets you the basics, lodging, some food.
Right.
But the model seems really geared towards making the things that make a vacation truly enjoyable, like really good food, an upgrade.
And an upgrade that comes with pretty persistent sales pressure once you're actually on board.
It turns it into a series of like microtransactions instead of just relaxing.
Yeah, it can feel that way.
And the extra costs didn't stop with the fancy restaurants, did they? This review seems to list a whole bunch of other things you might think would be included but weren't.
Oh, yeah. This is another big part of why they felt it was below standards. It's a critical area.
Like what? Give us some examples.
Okay, so the source mentions having to pay extra to play bingo.
Bingo, really?
Yep. And getting just a glass of water outside of meal times. You had to pay for that too, unless you'd already bought a drinks package.
Hold on, water. You had to buy a package to just get water. Not soda, not juice, just water.
Unless you were in the dining room or maybe the buffet during meal hours. Yes.
Yes.
That's what they reported. And tips.
Ah, tips. Always a fun topic.
They were automatically deducted every single day, added right to your onboard account.
Regardless of the service you felt you received.
Apparently so. Just an automatic daily charge per person.
Wow. Okay, that would definitely surprise a lot of people, I think. Water and automatic tips.
Absolutely. And it didn't stop there. They mentioned paying extra for, like, specific fancy coffees or even a healthy kale and cucumber drink they wanted.
So not just alcohol or soda, but even some basic beverages.
Right. Individual cookies outside the buffet area had a price tag. Excursions in port, obviously those usually cost extra.
But even just getting off the ship.
Well, yeah, efficiently anyway. Often you either had to buy a tender ticket or a shuttle bus ticket, depending on the port, or you'd face really long lines to get off. Unless you paid for some kind of priority status or were in a fancy suite that lets you, skip the line.
Wow. Okay, so the cruise gets you to these amazing places in Italy.
Which is the main draw.
Absolutely. But the actual experience of being there, getting ashore easily, staying hydrated on the ship, even getting snacks, it feels like it's all layered with potential extra costs.
And friction points.
Yeah.
If you choose not to pay. It really paints a picture where that base fare covers getting you on the ship and sailing to the destination. But pretty much everything that enhances the experience itself. Comfort in your room with enough power, decent food without feeling hassled, drinks, exploring ports without huge waits, even acknowledging service through tips seems to have another price tag attached.
Okay, but let's be fair. It couldn't have been all bad, right? The review must mention some positives.
Oh, definitely. Yes. They did find things they enjoyed, like the entertainment, for example.
Ah, the shows and stuff.
Yeah, they said for an older, maybe smaller ship, the entertainment was actually quite engaging.
What did they have?
There was an illusionist, like a magic show, a song and dance production, pretty standard cruise fare, but they said it was well done.
Okay.
And one performer really stood out to them, a violist, a very talented violist.
Oh, interesting. What was special about the violist?
Well, the reviewer loved the mix of music. It wasn't just classical stuff. Apparently, the violist played classical pieces alongside Queen, AC/DC, Coldplay.
Whoa, AC/DC on the viola. That sounds kind of cool.
Doesn't it? And the reviewer seemed to really connect with hearing what they charmingly called their vintage music from the 60s and 70s performed so well.
A personal touch.
Exactly. They actually called it the best music ever performed on a cruise for them.
Wow. That's high praise.
It is. And it shows,
Yeah.
right, even when the bigger picture, the ship's systems, the business model might have shortcomings. Individual talents and specific moments can still create really positive memories. They can still be deeply appreciated.
That's a great point. And despite all the, the sales pitches and the potential frustrations with fees and outlets, did the reviewer find ways to just escape, find some peace and quiet?
They did, yeah. They made a point of mentioning that. They found plenty of free, quiet spots if you looked for them.
Away from the main action.
Exactly. Away from the louder, busier areas like the main pool deck or the central atrium where all the shops and stuff are.
Where did they find refuge?
They mentioned a library area, which is pretty common, an indoor pool area that was apparently often quiet, and a specific lounge right at the front of the ship that they said was frequently empty during the daytime.
Ah, a quiet little oasis. Just to read a book, scroll on your phone?
Or just decompress, yeah.
Hmm.
Without someone asking if you've considered the Tuscan grill package tonight.
Huh. Yeah, that sounds pretty essential for keeping your sanity on a trip like that.
It really does. And it highlights that, value and comfort can still be found, even on a cruise that maybe feels pressured in other ways.
You just have to actively seek out those less promoted, included amenities sometimes.
Exactly. The quiet corners, the included entertainment you genuinely enjoy.
Okay, so let's try and wrap this up. We've gone through the good, the bad, the outlet situation. What does this one detailed review really tell us about cruising or maybe even travel more broadly today?
I think it really underscores that disconnect that can happen, the gap between the marketing, the glossy brochure,
Yeah.
and the actual lived experience day to day.
Hmm?
This reviewer, they got to Italy, they saw the places they wanted to see, they said the crew they interacted with were friendly.
So the core promise was delivered, in a way.
In a way, yes. But the overall feeling of the trip, that subjective sense of enjoyment and value, that was heavily impacted by all those practical details.
Details that weren't quite up to snuff or that came with those unexpected costs or pressures we talked about.
Precisely. The actual comfort and function of the cabin, could four people really fit? Could you charge your devices easily?
Right, the power outlets.
The business model seeming to influence the quality of the included food? The constant feeling of being upsold?
And that layering of fees for water, for tips, for getting off the ship efficiently.
Yeah. All those seemingly small points, they added up. They accumulated to
Yeah.
make the whole experience feel, in their words, below standards.
Okay, so the big takeaway here seems to be about managing expectations, right?
Absolutely.
Mm.
Understanding these kinds of specifics before you book seems crucial. You can't just rely on the itinerary map or the headline price.
No.
Detailed reviews like this one, the ones that really get into the weeds, power outlets, dining pressure, hidden fees, they're just invaluable. They help you see past the marketing shine.
It really makes you think, doesn't it? If something as basic as, like, water isn't always free outside of meals, and tips are just added on automatically no matter what you thought of the service, how much homework do you, the traveler, need to do?
Yeah, how much research is required now to truly grasp the full cost, not just the sticker price, but the real cost and the actual day-to-day reality of a vacation before you commit?
It leads to that provocative question, I guess.
Which is?
In this kind of modern travel landscape, is there really such a thing as a truly all-inclusive experience anymore? Or is that base price just the starting point, the entry fee before all the necessary or at least highly encouraged upgrades begin?
That's the question, isn't it? Is all-inclusive just an illusion now for many types of travel? Something to definitely think about.